Making video games is hard, demoralizing work. There's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of tedium, and there are a lot of difficult problems to solve. So developers kind of have to find a way to chill sometimes, and one of the more entertaining ways is when they add the little Easter eggs and secrets to their games that are maybe not 100% intended to be found by players, but we live in an age where everything will eventually be found. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 things developers added when they got bored. Now, just as a little preface before we get into this, I don't know for certain that any of these secrets were added to games because the developers were actually bored. I don't have any concrete proof. Okay? I'm just making a value judgment. I think a lot of these things were just thrown in for devs to amuse themselves with, but I'm just saying that. I just think that when you look at a lot of these things, because they were bored, sounds like a very appropriate answer to why did they do this? We're just having some fun here, so let's just dive in. Starting off with number 10 is God of War, The Stranger Gives You Both Barrels. Now, that first fight in God of War 2018 is iconic. It's still one of the best opening battles in a video game, period. It's cinematic, it's exciting. Basically, I'm saying it was really good. But there's one aspect of it that was hidden for years. Back when the game was a console exclusive, a guy named Lance McDonald, who's a pretty prolific video game modder hacker, managed to inject his own custom camera script in the PlayStation version of the game, and just out of curiosity, he decided to see what happens when Kratos knocks Baldur off the ledge at the end of their fight. What he saw was, I mean, you probably already know, you're looking at it right now, but when Baldur falls off the cliff, he's got a little extra spite to throw at Kratos, and flips in the double bird. It's actually pretty tough to catch in-game because he falls so fast, and at a certain point he just disappears off the map. Now that the game's on PC, this little Easter egg is significantly easier to find, though. Just load up a free camera mod and you're good to go. But at the time of release, I don't think anyone seriously expected the game to get a PC port. So it's likely this Easter egg was never intended to be seen, just there to amuse the animator or whoever put it in. And number 9 is Jedi Fallen Order with these secret low poly models. Now, there's a lot of weird Easter eggs in this game. Like that one at the start of the game where you press the button on the train like 66 times in a row, you hear a voice saying execute order 66. I don't know why that's there. It's a weird thing to take the time to do. The most elaborate, strange, and also well-hidden secret in the game is probably this one in the tune of Ilrum on Zepho. For the longest time, it was assumed you could only see this at a specific point in the story, but it's actually, well, in terms of instructions, not that complicated. But how it works, you do have to do a nearly impossible jump. So, like, not that tricky, but also really tricky. So you do this jump, which you're not going to do the first try, period. It's not going to happen. Don't even think about it. Then you squeeze through this little gap, and there's a bunch of weird low polygon models based off creatures you encounter in the game. It's not some random little voice sample. It actually took a bit of effort, and it's not totally hidden off screen. It's pretty obscure, like to the point where it might as well be hidden off the screen. The centerpiece is, I guess, a Yoda statue thing. I don't know if it's supposed to be like papercraft or just some art guy making low poly models for fun, but you gotta assume they just left this in because they were bored. From what I've heard, it sounds like there's often not a lot for the art department to do when a game's wrapping up, so maybe little projects like this are what they do. At number 8 is Dragon Age Inquisition, the Lord of the Pies. You spend a lot of time in Skyhold, the main base of the Inquisition in this game, but a lot of people are probably unaware of the horror that lurks underneath the Grand Hall. I don't know why this is there, but if you manage to clip into the ground, then you'll find I mean, you can see it, right? It's a pie with a top hat on it. For some reason, creepy music plays when you get close enough to it. Though for whatever reason, I can only get up so close before it just completely disappears. Unlike God of War, this is actually possible to find without some kind of free camera mod, and it's surprisingly easy. You literally just jump through the ceiling at some spot and it causes the hall to disappear. Then you just jump through the floor and you're there. It's a bug, I assume a bug, that hasn't been fixed in 8 years, but I'm not complaining. It makes this finding this bizarre thing possible, at least. One common thread with this one is that people who stumbled onto it by mistake just think they're going insane, which, yeah, checks out. And number 7 is Dishonored, the Death of the Outsider, a familiar door. Another interesting Easter egg players actually missed for years, but the only reason they were able to find it was because the level designer dropped some serious clues on Twitter, which eventually led to people tracking it down. In the bank job, there's a sewer underneath the titular bank with a boarded up room that you can't go into. It's extremely dark, and the only way you can see in it is by cranking up the brightness, which, I mean, has to drive some people completely batshit insane. That is a cardinal sin to a small segment of folks. Like, if you ever do that with footage and people notice, I'll just say the hills are alive with the sound of music. You can use a free camera mod on the PC version as well, but you can tell there's something unusual about the door. If you're not a Silent Hill fan, it probably doesn't mean a lot to you, but for people that are, it's an immediately recognizable door. It's the door from Silent Hill 4, The Room, the one into the apartment that's all chained up. It's literally the iconic image from the game, and for some reason they just decided to sneak it in here. And number 6 is Watch Dogs, the Pawnee Loch Ness Monster. An interesting one that was probably meant to be included in the actual game, but never ended up happening. Out in the countryside, there's a big lake. Normally, there's nothing there. Seriously, nothing. Even if you use some kind of camera trick or clip through the floor, you're not going to find anything, so don't think that's the thing here. If you happen to have an early version of the game, however, it's possible to look under the water and find this weirdly incomplete sea monster that's hanging out underneath the lake. It's interesting because it's both an out-of-bounds secret and a piece of dummied out content. The guy who worked on it probably wanted it to appear in the game, but for whatever reason it never got finished. But they left it in the world anyway, so people could see it. Ubisoft, however, are kind of the kings of no fun allowed. So when people start finding stuff like this, instead of embrace it, the company just removed it from the game. And these days, even the one free camera mod that used to work isn't functional because of game updates. So the Loch Ness Monster is pretty much impossible to find now. The only reason we can see it is because of footage that people made that's still online. So at least there's that. But just like the real Loch Ness Monster, we're relying on people's eyewitness accounts for this one. We're never going to see it ourselves. This one is at least definitely real though. And number 5 is Crash Bash Homer and Bart. This one's so obscure, I pretty much got to give credit to Ace Trainer Squirtle on Twitter, because I've never seen this one mentioned anywhere else. In the beta version of Crash Bash, seriously, not the main game, the beta version, there's a weird little Easter egg. The game is split into a bunch of minigame challenges, which all end in some kind of boss fight. You get to Komodo Mo and Joe's fight, and you notice something unusual about their icons. It's Homer and Bart from, The Simpsons. The funny thing about this one is we can pretty much say with certainty it was never meant to be seen by anybody. And for a lot of reasons. For one, it's in a level that was never meant to be played on the demo. The only reason anybody's ever seen it is because they figured out a way to access dev code in the demo, which just so happened to include the entire rest of the game. So seriously, if you've got Spyro 3, you can play the entire game of Crash Bash, if anyone actually knew the code at the time anyways. Keep in mind, it was a beta. It wasn't the complete game, so it's possible the Homer and Bart portraits were just placeholders. In fact, fairly likely. In any case, at the time, this was a game that was being developed by Eurocom and published by Sony, which they didn't have the rights to The Simpsons, so they obviously couldn't use this stuff. Probably just something one of the developers thought was novel, and it was the beta, so who cares? These kinds of little discoveries are always fascinating. If you're a person who likes to find dumb and pointless stuff buried in old games, betas are gold mines. At number 4 is Fallout, Boom. I know that's a little vague, but I mean, it's Fallout. You probably know what it means. The first one came out way back in 1997, though, and the video games industry, especially the PC video games industry, was a super different place. You could do dumb stuff to amuse yourself and just leave it in the game, and nobody really thought a lot of it. In fact, I kind of wish that attitude never disappeared. It was delightful. Some evidence of that attitude, back in the Fallout days. During the end credits of the game, you could type in boom, and then something happens. A picture of the legendary game designer Tim Kaine appears, and then his head explodes. Like, remember at the start of this when I said you could probably guess what it was because Fallout and boom? You were partly right. Obviously, there was an explosion, but he probably didn't guess this part. And it was probably just something that they put in the game to make the 30 people who worked on it laugh. It's one of those Easter eggs that pop up from old games just to get forgotten about for a while, then get some attention, get forgotten again, get some attention. It's fun. It's just obscure enough to be an interesting thing to remember, but also easy enough to forget. And number 3 is the Naked Man from Guild Wars. Sometimes the things developers add into a game seem like nonsense, but somehow they actually serve a specific purpose. You're probably thinking to yourself, that's the intro for a point about a naked man? Oh boy. this is going to be interesting. So Guild Wars, there is this completely nude NPC model that would pop up from time to time randomly in people's games. It being an MMO, it left people really confused as to its ultimate purpose. But the actual function is both kind of funnier and also makes sense. So this was a big game by a relatively small team. So according to one of the main devs, Gail Gray, the art department wanted to make something that really stood out so people would know when some part of the map still needed work. So instead of a big red sign or something, they would plop down the naked man, correctly assuming that a naked dude would get people's attention more than some text or something. And hopefully it would make it so they would go out of their way to, get the art done in the area so that their screens wouldn't be blighted by a naked man ass. Of course, it obviously managed to sneak through the cracks, get it? But whenever it didn't get through, that's when players saw the naked man. He'd appear in certain spots and then quickly get removed from the game. And number 2 is Psychonauts 2's Secret Animatic, one of the strangest Easter eggs ever created. This one was created to be found. There's a specific method for finding it, but it's extremely obscure. There's just no way anyone would see this without specifically hunting it down. It's not a happenstance Easter egg, let's say. I don't know really how to start with it, so let's just go down how you find it first. You gotta beat the game, go back to the level Hollis Hot Streak, the casino level, and then go down the maternity ward section, which is a hospital/casino. Yes, just roll with it. It's Psychonauts. To trigger the Easter egg, you got to take a giant pen, throw it at the ward part of the sign. That triggers this little animatic where you have to see it yourself.
Why am I pregnant?
There's no time, Raz. Lobato's consciousness is about to erupt out of your psychic uterus.
It's Raz, the main character, and he's psychic, pregnant or something, and everybody has to wear clown masks. It's total freaking nonsense. The thing with this one is it's not the developers being bored. They brought in a ringer. Like, this bizarre little thing was created by Pendleton Ward, the Adventure Time guy, which that absolutely checks out. It's bizarre, a little bit disturbing, and I don't know why they made it. So it lines up with about 30% of Adventure Time. And at number 1, The Simpsons Hit and Run, the Cowhead washing machine. For the last entry, let's just go back to the bread and butter of the list. Weird crap that got left in the game just because, and that's it. In the first level of Springfield meets Grand Theft Auto, The Simpsons Hit and Run, if you manage to clip through the bottom of the world, there's a pretty odd little object to find floating around in the infinite abyss just below the surface, a washing machine that for some reason has a cow head. I don't know what else there is to say. I don't know why this is here. I don't think anybody who worked on the game has ever explained why it's there. I don't know what it would be for, but it's a washing machine prop with a cow head sprite in front of it. So that's a thing. There's no other explanation for this one other than some level designer was just screwing around. Maybe it's a placeholder for a cow or something. I don't know, but I choose to believe it was something they made because they were bored. Or left it in because they were bored. I don't know. Game development doesn't leave a lot of room for, silly boredom, but there's always going to be some downtime and a lot of tedium, so I imagine this is probably the result. A cowhead and a washing machine. Together at last. The crossover event of the season. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.